Yo, what's up, YouTube? My name's RO, and this video is about 3 Feet from Gold, and this is chapter one, Running on Empty, and I just wrote it here. It's from a book, but I basically just copied it. But I'm like making an affirmation video, so I'm just reading it to you. And this is chapter one, Running on Empty. Flinging open the taxi cab, and it's like a story, so you can just like listen along. You can see all my other videos. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, man. All right. Anyway, so we're just gonna go ahead and continue on. Flinging open the taxi cab door, Greg stepped in, then slumped across the back seat. He was running late again. A cell phone clutched in one hand and rolled up a newspaper in the other gave him the look of a stereotypical Wall Street junkie. He barked at the address of the cab driver. The driver rolled his eyes in response to his new passenger's attitude. Having just returned from New York that morning in a time of business lunch, Greg was still in his East Coast mode, very late to his girlfriend at the apartment. Block after block, the San Diego native chatted endlessly into his phone, pausing long enough to dial a new number or switch to an incoming call. How about that? How about some good news for a change? That's a good one. Excuse me. I think I'm not. Okay, I'm good, yeah. He thought to himself, frustrated by the message that was sent for him. Suddenly, I burped. Anyways, we're gonna continue on because I don't care. Okay. The message that was left for him. Suddenly and unexpectedly, there was a pause. Hey, wait a second, Greg said. This is his counterpart. Through this receiver, this isn't my jacket. That idiot at that restaurant, they gave me the wrong one. Overhearing this remark, the driver looked into the rearview mirror and asked, do you want me to go back to where he picked me up? Running his hand over, Greg looked at the designer label on the inside and smiled, and the tone of the Super City was returned to his as was, and it was done, and it was better than mine. Some sucker will have to say that was an old jacket. He enjoyed the thought. Of the man fuming when he discovered the switch with an inferior garment. The driver shook his head in disappointment before catching himself. Sadly, he was accurately assessed to the passengers of the character. As a virtual poster child for my society, Greg expressed little regard for the others and their feelings. He was all about looking good and looking successful, though he hadn't always been that way. In actuality, he ran a small marketing company, and he was much less impressive than the inflatable title he had conjured up for himself on his business cards. So far from the unexpected, successful image he had projected, he was seriously in debt and found himself uninspired and unfulfilled. Even worse, his relationship with his girlfriend Maya was falling apart fast. At this moment, his life was reminiscent of a bike ride on flat tires down a dirt road with marked potholes. The one thing he had learned from the certain thing was nothing in life nothing was certain. There had been a time where everything was out before him like a banquet by a conquering hero. He had a plan, a strategy, and he was armed with the energy of a nuclear explosion. His entire life was on track until he ran into what many would consider simple, ordinary roadblocks. This was like his Achilles heel. He knew how to dream in awesome proportions, and he knew a thing or two about the follow-through. He just couldn't seem to handle adversity. And in this deeply troubled economy, there was little else in front of him as so many other people. In other words, Greg was full of expectations, but he had no results to show for them. Results. And in Texas, they refer to as that all hat and no cattle. We were here with the cabbie that was announced pulling up to the curb in front of the luxury apartment building very few people could afford, especially Greg himself nowadays, stepping out of the cab and mumbling, "Keep the change." He tossed a He tossed a wad up to $20 bills through the window. Looking at the meter with the wrinkled cash, the driver realized he had just been giving a whopping 10-cent tip. Another big spender, he thought to himself as he sped off in disgust. "Good evening, Frank," the doorman said in the advance of Greg's approach. Handing the tenant his mail was past due rent notice, Frank leaned toward him and whispered, "Sir, there is something I need to tell you." Greg motioned over the phone, still pressed his ear. He continued talking and walking. Frank, who had worked in the building since it opened, shrugged his shoulders and went back to his duties. Unfortunately, this was not the unusual interaction between the two. The only pause in the telephone monologue came when the two elevator doors opened, and only because Greg knew there would be no receptionist inside it. He cut the call short, and he was relieved that no one joined him inside and pushed the button. He pushed the button for his floor, leaned back mesmerized by his own reflection. In the shiny doors, gazing at himself, he thought, "I look pretty good in my new jacket." It was a quiet ride to this destination, but in his brain, less than it was not still. Having no one to talk to, his inner dialogue was his current troubles that kept him busy until the ding of the elevator disrupted his thoughts. Returning home, as he had done 100 times before, he stepped from the elevator, walked to his apartment, unlocked the door, and went inside, calling out his girlfriend's name, Maya. The two had been together for 5 years, but the last 12 months had been tough. All that she wanted was a man Greg used to be not, and it was the image that he created for himself. All he wanted was to avoid commitment at any cost. They had attempted counseling with little success because Greg always seemed to have some crisis come up that preempted their scheduled appointments. Maya knew he wasn't a bad person, yet wondered if he was the right person for her. Walking through the hallway, he noticed something missing. Actually, more than just something was missing, almost everything was missing. Greg stood more there in confusion. This was more than just his apartment, right? He stepped back into the hall and looked at the number on the door. The number was correct. The view of the city was right, pretty spectacular. In fact, a detail that had upped the price of the apartment substantially. The only problem was that the living room was bare, stripped. There was only empty spaces where the furnishings used to be. He grabbed the telephone and punched a button and connected him directly to the front desk. Frank answered immediately, and as he tried to tell him he came in, "She left 2 days ago, and she said to tell you, well, I'd rather not say." "Forget it. I get the picture," Greg barked, and then dropped down, and then the receiver looked around, and he was there to admire her with the executed plan. It was almost as if the Grinch had visited a Who house and cleared out the whole place. The only items she left behind were his favorite. Rather than in the chair on the side of the table were single frame photographs of himself. There was not taped to the photo. He removed it from the frame and read it aloud. "Greg, here is a picture of it in the Bahamas. Notice that you're on the beach alone. This represents the way I feel in our relationship. I hope you find someone who can love you as much as you love yourself. Maya." Throwing the note aside, he felt a sense of abandonment as he trudged across the room, removing the stranger's coat and letting it fall into the bare floor. As he loosened his tie, he noticed that a business card had fallen out of the jacket onto the floor face up. It hadn't occurred to him to check the packets to see if he could figure out the other owner who might be. He picked up the card. The name printed, or the business card, was that of the legendary Jonathan Buckland, who had just happened to be the most well-known and politically well-connected business tycoon in the city. Greg flipped through the card over to look at the back. Nothing it was blank. It looked at the front again. Could this be Mr. Buckland's jacket, he wondered. Greg smiled as he smelled opportunity. Immediately his gratitude changed from loss to hope. He now had an excuse to call this great man. The chance to connect, even briefly, with a person of Buckland's stature would be worth much more than the value of the jacket that now lay crumpled at Greg's feet. Forgetting all about the empty apartment and the girlfriend who had left him, he went to the telephone to call the business leader office. Maybe his luck had changed. Now that was chapter 1. Take it back here. Running on empty, 3 feet from gold. My name's R.O. And here at the top it says, here at the top of the page it says here, every adversity, every failure, and every heartache carries with it the seed of equivalent or greater benefit. My name's R.O. and I hope you're listening. Thanks for watching.